Assalamu alaikum everyone. If I am audible, then I would like to use my voice instead of mic. Okay. So I'm Nafis Ahmed Bhuya, and good afternoon to everyone. Before starting my presentation formally, I'd like to say something. Especially nowadays, we usually encounter with this problem that if we are really able to intervene these Habermasian arguments or discussion into our practical life. So when I conduct any research, I always ask this question that if this thing will actually matter in the long run or not. So I have done my MA thesis on post-humanism on Kashmir to see whether we can actually minimize the conflicts in that area. But in this research, I'll be focusing on from desert to delta, the reclamation of indigenous ecographies in the Bleeding of the Stone by Ibrahim Al-Koni and Amitav Ghosh's Jungle Nama. So we are quite familiar with Sundarban, but we are not really into Sahara because it is quite away from us, and we usually do not think about the desert ecology. So my study is primarily focused on how those indigenous ecographies help us to understand to how extent we can preserve the natural resources or the nature's gifts in those environments. So without any further delay, I'm just, I'm sorry,
You can use the...
Okay. So I know most of you are not really familiar with The Bleeding of the Stone. It's an acclaimed novel by a Libyan author who is describing, or he's presenting a desert ecology where Yusuf, the protagonist, tries to preserve the ecological well-being of that area. And we see the Italian invasion that happened on that time and how they tried to destabilize the area. And the contemporary environmental crises are usually shaped by the post-colonial modes of knowing. So even after the decolonization or after leaving the colonies, the post-colonial states usually adopt the strategies to govern the states, even the forest or the wetlands or the deserts. So these things are happening. So how can we find out the original ideas or the indigenous ideas of those environments so that we can preserve the environments like the way they used to do in their time before the colonial period? Because in the colonial period, we all already know that they used to think that desert or wetlands are without any history. So we have to retrieve that history. Also, we need to know the ethical boundaries so that we can really ensure a positive environment in those areas. So the indigenous ecographies are marked by relational, ethical, and embodied characteristics, and they function as a counter logic to colonial utility, challenging its emphasis on control, optimization, and extortion. So it's a typical methodology, and it might be a cliche to use eco or re in these words, but in this presentation, I'm introducing the word ecography as a concept to mark the lived relational and ethical mappings of space in those areas, especially in the Sahara Desert and the deltaic space of Sundarban. So first thing first, the first thing that I want to share is that the relational landscape of Sahara. So when I'm unpeeling the layers of my discussion, this is the first one, and the second one is the extraction logics, and which are countered by the indigenous ecology. And the third one will be the ethical limits. So these are the three key pillars of my presentation. And the first one starts with the colonial environmental discourse, which historically framed deserts as voids, unproductive spaces, awaiting technological intervention or extractive use. So it is assumed that these things are void, and we need to win those places or control these spaces so that we can make the best outcome or economic outcome of those places. So in the text, the Bleeding of the Stone, we usually encounter these words that unless necessity commands it. So there is these two animals which are predominant in the entire novel. One is Wadden and the other is Gazelle. So these two animals are hunted by the hunters from the cities, and especially the people who came from away lands, from the Italians. And they served many technologies, say for example, guns, advanced guns and Land Rovers. So they had all those things to control the environment, and they only did to actually please their appetite. They didn't need it, but they had the pleasure to just taste the exotic taste of those areas. So in the novel, we see Yusuf, who doesn't eat meat, but once upon a time he used to love meat. So the transformation that we see in his character is marked by this tendency of necessity, which is a thing that predominate in the novel. So the ritual functions as a mechanism through which indigenous spatial knowledge is transmitted. Say for example, which I will elaborate in the last section, is that amulet. We use tabiz in Bangladesh. So in those areas, they use amulet before eating any meat. So they think that Waden controls or have the spirit of the desert. I know it sounds really odd from a scientific view, but they treat the desert with so much respect that when they eat those meat, they wear those amulets so that they can respect that thing. Yes, they need it, but at the same time, they're also respecting the animals that they are eating. So it's not something like that. It's a propaganda to say that we do not need to eat meat, but it's a thing that we need to control our desire. So the Moal, a Sufi song, okay, it's a really special Sufi song in the desert area, and the protagonist's father sings it whenever he's sad, and he laments the collapse of the ecology of the Saharan area. So the Moal song, which is translated here, is: the desert is a true treasure for him who seeks refuge from man and the evil of man. In it is contentment, in it is death, and all you seek. So they treat the desert like their own thing, and they adore those desert and the animals in it. So they use the word treasure, and whenever they see that the desert is facing any problem, they sing this song to pacify themselves and to transmit this knowledge, this indigenous knowledge, throughout their generation. And in the Jungle Nama, we see the same relational space, and I need to move fast because we have limited time. So there are some specific lines. Since it's a verse narrative, so I have put those lines. They needed neither land nor water alone. So the flux or the relational idea of those lands is accentuated in these lines. So a river lose their names. And Ghosh notes famously that those who forget to listen do not return. So if I just say the summary of the Jungle Nama in really short, then there's these two characters, Dhona, and there is Dukhi. Dhona is the uncle of Dukhi, and he goes to Sundarban to extract as much wax and honey as he can, but he didn't need so. So when he wanted to go there, his other brother, Mona, said that those who enter the forest should go out of need, or they will court danger. Tigers know the smell of greed. So the greed is still, connected. In the desert, you can see that the greed the greed in human is excessive, and throughout the entire narrative, the author is trying to say that we need to constrain it. And in this same novel, in this verse narrative of Amitav Ghosh, we see the same tendency that the human greed is trying to destroy the stability of those indigenous ecologies. So these things are very common. I'd like to move to my next slide, where you can see the Waden. This is the animal which is referred as the spirit of the desert. Okay, so in these slides, there are lots of things I have mentioned in these slides, which is included in my paper. So here we see that when someone hunts a Waden at some period in this narrative, the Waden is really devastated by the killing of its cub, and it was devastated, and he looked toward the sky, and somewhere he was complaining to the creator that, look what human did to us. And these sort of messages create an impact in ourselves, that what are we doing? Is it right to go beyond our need? So these ideas are repeatedly articulated in this novel. And also you can see in the first thing that the Land Rovers, the firing guns had arrived in this space after the Italian invasion. So there is this character John who helps Cain, and it's we know Cain is the son of Adam. So it's a metaphor that we are trying to grab here, and we'll see at the last slide that how it is relatable. So in the delta, we see the same extractive ecology where Dokhin Roy or Dokhin Rai, the spirit of the Sundarbans, who is saying that it is not just flesh he craves, he likes to kindle greed, to wake the demon in man is his greatest need. So it's not something like that, that he is generating greed, but he is incorporating it in a sense that the colonial counterparts are also there to accentuate those greed. And environmental rationality does not oppose the demon, it collaborates with it. So after Dukhi is handed over to Dokhin Roy by Dhona, the evil spirit says that look into the holes of your ships, see what a honey treasure Dukhi's life has brought. So there is this justification that extraction is justified through retroactively through profit. So the more you will give to me an unethical, if you do this on unethical things, then we'll give those economic paychecks. And the last pillar of my presentation is the living ethical maps and epistemic violence. So throughout the entire narrative of the bleeding of the stone, we see that the desert tests you, how you are spirited, at the same time you control yourself, it watches you, it remembers you. So there is no checkpost, there is no marking, only you remember those places and you respect the desert. And this is how they have learned to live with the desert, okay? And the animal is protected by the oath of the ancestors. So we see the stones on those places. At the same time, we see that how they are respected throughout the entire narrative. And the epistemic, okay, I'll take 3 minutes, okay. The epistemic reclamation at proverb function, there are lots of proverbs used in the novel to make sure that they do not overpower their greed. The warden has the spirit of the mountain in it. If I wiped out the gazelles, you help me do it. So in the theoretical aspect, I have taken help from Rob Nixon's Slow Violence and Graham Huggan's Postcolonial Ecocriticism. So in Slow Violence, we see that we do not understand how the ecological erosion is happening. And in this same instance, we can see that Cain, who used to hunt gazelles, and he was surprised that I didn't know that one day gazelle will empty it. And in the novel, we get to know that he cannot find gazelle, and so he's going after Wadan to find it and to taste it and to complete his appetite. And in the Jungle Nama, we see the same sort of epistemic knowledge. Say, for example, in the Mual song, we see in the desert, and now here we see the Dipodi Poyar that is used in this verse narrative, that to call Bon Baby and Shah Jongoli, you need to say these words, and you have to use these words in a Dipodi Poyar's specific form and meter. So be sure to cast your call in Dipodi Poyar. And the last thing, where Bon Baby teaches Dokhin Roy to articulate his words with these Dipodi Poyar so that he can control his desire. So to control those sort of desire or greed, the indigenous knowledge is always there, and we can reclaim it through these discussions. So this is a formal conclusion, but I know it's a cliche, and sometimes it's a fashion, and probably it's a way to gain attention or attraction that when you use eco or re in our researches, but we need to seriously consider that how these words or these discussion can actually bring changes. I think it's possible only if we look at the ethical responsibilities. So in terms of governing the environment, we do not need to entirely rely upon the colonial logics. We need to focus, or we can also adapt the indigenous knowledge so that we can balance it out and we can live peacefully. So that is it from me today. If you have any question, I'd love to answer.